Glad that everyone can join us. So we are talking about the importance of having a positive support group to help us navigate through depression because we cannot do this alone. We have to have a community to help propel us forward. So Melissa, do you want to add anything for the intro?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is a good time to talk about it, especially with seasonal depression, like that being a thing, especially as light workers being so sensitive to, subtle shifts in the environment. And so there's many of us that are going to be, walking into that state of being, especially with just the weather.
Yeah.
And so
So true.
I think that like this is something that all of us can relate to, and so just having people who you can reach out to or people that you can connect to is so important because it can be that one thing that can get you through like the storm.
Yeah, that one conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, beautiful. Well, let's get into it. So, the first thing we wanted to talk about was, part of what feeds depression are our negative thoughts, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
when we're isolated, those thoughts begin to fester because our brain wants to be efficient, right? So whatever thought is on auto loop, your brain is going to make that thought efficient. So you're going to find evidence all around you of why you're not worthy, why you're not good enough, why your life sucks. You know what I mean? So that's why, by being able to have a conversation with someone, that one conversation can shift that perception almost immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's coming up for me right now is I remember when I was going through it, it usually hits hard for me around like the end of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and what memory that's coming up, I remember going through a lot for me with this is like nobody cares about me. I'm not
Yeah.
lovable.
Yeah.
And it's so true when you say that you look for evidence to validate that belief, and coupled with anxiety, where you're overthinking and you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for like every single detail, like you see your friends hanging out and you're not invited, automatically you give
Yeah.
that meaning like,
Right.
okay, they don't care about me anymore
Yeah.
and I'm not worthy. And so then you feel like you're not a part of anything, and so your first instinct is to retreat and isolate yourself and just suffer in silence alone. And all this stuff and the stories that's playing out in your mind, nobody really knows about what's going on. And that's why it's so important to have people to reach out to, because this was something that had to do with my friends and I was overthinking it. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until a couple of months later where I opened up and talked to my friend about this, about how I felt. And it turns out like whatever I was thinking about and how I felt and the perspective that I viewed the whole situation was entirely off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't me, it was just the depression
Mm-hmm.
talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm sure you've had this experience as well, where when you do express this to friends, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea, like from the outside looking in, you seem so happy and everything is fine. So it's just really
Mhm.
interesting how like the external world is completely juxtaposed to like what's happening in the internal world.
Yeah, absolutely. You're living a completely different reality, subjectively, than what is actually taking place on an objective level.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and then it also makes me think about social media, and how when we're in those dark stages, we see other people, like posting their best, or, we see how some friends are liking other people's posts, but they may not like our post, and
Hmm.
how, that can also spin you into a negative loop as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of shame too when you're experiencing it. And I think having to go through that with shame is probably one of the most difficult things to do, because then shame is what keeps you from reaching out.
Yeah, being vulnerable. Hmm.
Hmm. And so then you end up just suffering in silence alone.
Well, one thing I want to say before we move on is, one thing that my therapist has taught me is we are social creatures, right? Even if we're, introverts, we like to be alone, and that's absolutely fine, but we need community. We need to be surrounded by other people. And like what has been significant with my healing after suffering with depression for 30 years is once I started slowly allowing myself to open up, like first you have to find a niche that you're absolutely comfortable with, right? And we'll talk about some options at the end of the session, but once you allow yourself to be vulnerable with a group of people and then you get that positive feedback in return, then you start to feel safe. You start to feel like, okay, I am a part of something bigger than me. Then that really shifts the depression in such a profound way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just want to highlight on like, feeling safe, especially with something that I want to share and keep in mind is the way that we perceive negative or unpleasant or uncomfortable emotions um, has a lot to do with how we were conditioned to perceive it, because anytime we experience negative emotions, anxiety, depression, or whatever, our first, I know for me, before I shifted that, my perspective was, okay, I shouldn't be feeling this at all. And so then anything that comes up for you, you end up judging yourself.
Yeah.
And then that's where the shame spiral comes in. And, and then you have the stigma. The stigma is also another thing too. It's like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I'm emo, or like
Yeah.
nobody wants to talk to someone who's
Yeah.
negative all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so then you just end up like, not reaching out. And I think it's so hard to be able to reach out, because for me, a part of me wanted help, but also another part of me was like afraid to reach out because I didn't want to project my negativity onto them, because I was afraid that if I put that on them, then it would scare them away.
Yeah.
And that they wouldn't want to be around me anymore. And so I was protecting them by keeping to myself. And that is definitely not the case, because then I've had friends who were in the same situation, being on the other side, where every time I'd reach out, they wouldn't respond. And the reason why they wouldn't respond is because of what they were going through and what they were feeling. And so I guess, like, how do we move past that? And what's coming up for me is just emotional acceptance, and that's definitely something that takes time to work towards, because learning to be okay with where you are at takes time, because like I said, we're conditioned to run away from our negative emotions. And so just learning to honor yourself with where you're at and learning to be okay and develop that sense of self-compassion for yourself, and kind of taking care of yourself and understanding that, hey, I'm not in an okay place right now, but it's okay to not be okay. And once you come to terms with that, then I feel like that's where a lot of the feelings of shame kind of subsides, and where you can come into a place where it's okay to reach out to people and be like, hey, I'm not okay right now, and what I really need right now to feel better or to help me work through this is just people who I can talk to and who can help me work through it.
That's so powerful, Melissa. And it just goes back to the seed starts with self-love and self-acceptance. And it's just like, it's easier said than done, because like, it's just really hard to really love yourself in the moment when you're feeling those dark moments. But I just hope that as we have more conversations like this and more people would know, like, because, when we have conversations like that, it's like, oh, it's not just the internal dialogue within my head. They have also had this internal dialogue in their head, and so on and so on. So it's like, by having these open conversations, it gives us all permission to just feel all of our emotions, even when we're in the muck of it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I want to that's coming up that I really want to emphasize is just having that self-awareness, you know, because I think that just once you become self-aware, then there's a shift that takes place. And if you are perceiving everything from just like a place of self-awareness, then you know that you whatever thoughts that you have that's lurking in your mind or whatever you're feeling has nothing to do with your identity and who you are. It just has to do with the current situation that you're in.
Totally. Yeah.
Does,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Totally does. Yeah. Really quickly, I want to say good morning to Cecilia and Crystal Sun's in the house. Thank you for joining
Hi, thank you for
us.
joining.
Yeah, it's like what that awareness does, it just neutralizes it, right? It like stops that charge of that heavy, dense perception that you have. So once you become aware of it, not saying it doesn't go away, but it just stops it in its tracks. And then,
Yeah.
then you're able to continue to ascend from there. Good morning, Erin.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining
absolutely.
us.
Because you learn how to work through it, you know. I think that like the second time around when I was like in a really deep pit of depression and I was experiencing suicidal thoughts, I was also self-aware at that time. And so that's the one thing that helped me like work through it, because then every time I'd experience that thought, even though I felt the emotions that accompany the thoughts, I knew that it wasn't true.
Yeah,
I
just
just
thought.
knew that it was just the depression
Yeah,
talking. So what
yeah.
I'm experiencing is just depression in the form of the thoughts, and just being aware with that and learning to sit with that and honor yourself with that. But like I said, it's a lot easier said
Yeah,
than done, and it
right. Yeah.
definitely takes time to get to that place. But having that self-awareness is so important, because then you know it's not you. It has nothing to do with who you are.
Yes, yeah. Um, we can stay on this point forever, can't we? Should we move on to another point?
Yeah.
This is good. This is
Yeah.
so good. Okay, so another let's see here. Um, helps us talk about da, 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 da. Yeah, so well, I guess we kind of talked about this. Well, no, we didn't really, but the importance of another value to having a support group around you is to give yourself opportunity to emote the emotions, right? To let the emotions out of your body. Because again, when you're alone, those emotions are festering, you're creating these stories that are not true, and then it starts to build and build. But when you can talk about it, it's like an energy discharge, right? Because emotions,
Yeah.
it's energy, right?
Yeah. And I think what I want to highlight is um, finding your tribe, you know, finding the right people that you can open up to.
Yeah.
I think that's so important as well, because you want to be able to um, have people who can hold space for you and support you in the ways that you need. So if someone is not able to provide that emotional support, it can make things worse. And I know
Yeah.
I've had this with my experience. We talked about this, and also being on the other end too. And I was actually having a conversation with a friend where he mentioned this, where sometimes when you're going through it, like it really does help to just like talk it out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And when it comes to reaching out to who to talk to, it's so important to keep that in mind. It's important to think about who can actually be there for you, because sometimes you know, you might reach out to someone and your intention is not to seek advice, but just to have someone to listen
Yeah,
to,
just to
right?
listen. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're not able to show up for you in the way that you need, and it ends up you and they respond in a way where you feel invalidated, you can, especially being in a depressive state, you have the tendency to assign that like meaning and make you feel like what you're feeling is invalid. But the truth of the matter is, in situations like that, when someone is not able um, to be there for you emotionally, it has more to do with their inability to show up for you than the validity of your experience.
Yes, and let's pause for 1 second, because first of all, Aaron, he's not going to be able to stay on long because his battery is low, and
Yeah.
awareness is a key. Just want to acknowledge, Aaron, your feedback, absolutely. And as far as like how do you start finding and attracting those people, especially right now since we're in lockdown? So one of the tools that we were going to offer, and I'll just share it with you right now, and I'll put it in the notes, Erin. You can just come back later today to check it. But there are 2 online groups that you can look into that are absolutely free. One is called Depression Bipolar Alliance. And it's really neat because they have it section where you can, like, if you just want to go into a group that just focuses on depression or bipolar or anxiety or a combination of both. And it's just an opportunity just to share your story with other people, you know, without, and there's not necessarily, there's some feedback, like if you need some tools, if you need some advice, people are open to doing that. So at least you have a container to go to. And then
Yeah.
there's also Adult Children of Anonymous. So I'll post those 2 groups. So it's a start, you know, because again, like, it's really a matter of getting yourself out of that space of being isolated. So if you don't necessarily have friends in your immediate circle that you can turn to, at least you have these very safe containers where you can, you know, go to and be able to emote. So I hope that
Yeah,
helps,
absolutely.
Erin.
And then another one that I want to give is there's support groups on Facebook. Um, there's so many that you can join, and we can provide that for you as well, because
Yeah.
there's support groups for many different things. An example for me is I follow a support group with like it's called Asian Mental Health, because growing up in an Asian household, the dynamic of that is like and another thing in and of itself, especially it being taboo in the Asian culture. And so there's a lot of people that experience depression with that. And so there's the Facebook group that I joined where people go on there, share their stories, and can, you know, express what they're currently struggling with. And then there's so many people that show up for each other. So that's an example for me. And so Facebook groups that you can find online, virtual Facebook groups, that's another thing that you can do as well. I
Okay.
hope that helps, Erin.
Yeah, we'll get those things over to you, all right?
Yeah.
Yes. So let's see here. Um, we may have to skip a couple of points because you're going in. Let's see here.
Okay,
Oh
sorry.
yeah, no, don't apologize at all. It's beautiful and organic. But what I wanted to say this too about, as far as like, because we both talked about this before, as far as like how to hold space for someone, or like what is it you're looking for when you want someone to hold space. Because I feel like another thing that happens, and again, I've done this before, is that when we talk, we don't necessarily want to feel better, because sometimes people don't know what to do, you know, when they're holding that space for you, because sometimes those quote unquote negative emotions can be intense. So they want to hug you immediately or pat you on the back or immediately offer you solutions, where sometimes you just want to just express it and get it out without needing solutions right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So can I just like give a couple of examples?
Please.
I think this is something that I am like guilty of myself, but sometimes when people reach out, you're not really sure what they're looking for, right? So like some people just want someone to listen to, so, and other people just want advice on what to do. And like I said, I'm guilty of this myself because I'm a problem solver. And
Yeah.
so whenever someone reaches out to me, my first instinct is to provide them solutions to feel better. It's not that I don't want to sit in that discomfort with them, it's just that I want to alleviate their pain.
Yeah.
But then having that reaction sometimes can be counterproductive, because for sometimes alleviating that pain is to learn to sit with that and letting it go, because then giving quick solutions can also be invalidating their experience. And I know what not to say, because this is just from my experience, but whenever I'm reaching out, and I also think that when you're reaching out, it might also be helpful to be clear on what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
But what not to say to someone who is like going through it is to just be like, okay, that's not something that I can help you out with. You might need to go see a therapist for that. Another one is, this is something that always gets me and always makes me feel worse. But if I'm reaching out to someone and I just need a vent, and they're responding by saying there are other people out there who have it worse, that does
Oh
not
my
help.
God. Yeah. Yeah, it's a major trigger.
Yeah, that does
Yeah,
not help. So that's definitely something not to
because it just
say.
feels dismissive.
Yeah. And I think
Mhm.
it depends on the person as well. But sometimes when I'm reaching out and the other person ends up like talking about their own experience,
Mhm.
I know the intention with that is to like help
Relate
to
and
relate, but some
yeah.
there's like a time and place for that, you know. But that's something that I realized that okay, that it when that happens to me, it feels like they're making it about themselves
Mhm.
and taking that time and space away from me to like express and let it out. But that's something where I feel like maybe don't say it. Can also depend on the person
Because
as
it could
well.
be coming from a place of nervousness and anxiety because they just don't know how to hold
Mhm.
the space. So,
Yeah.
it's just easier by default to bring it back to themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's also good that we're talking about this because,
Hmm.
like I said, mental health, like and depression, all that stuff, it's so taboo,
It is,
and because
yeah.
it's so taboo that when it does come up, we don't know how to show up in situations like that because we're not taught how to do that,
Hmm.
right? We're not taught how to empathize and be there for each other, and that's why I think one thing it's important to have is like also be mindful of who you shouldn't reach out to. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Hmm.
Also be mindful of that, of like who makes who doesn't help and who also helps, because um sometimes like reaching out to a person who might make you feel worse isn't like would make things worse. I don't know.
Yeah. Or
I
they
think
just feed into the story, like they'll just, yeah, add
yeah.
more fuel to the fire as opposed to just holding the space and, being neutral and compassionate.
Yeah, so does that help? I does that make sense for you guys? Like I hope that helps because that's something that I wanted to bring up because it's something that I've experienced and I know like for me and it's also different from it varies from person to person, but um yeah, it's so important to just keep that in mind, like of the people that you feel like you can count on. Okay, well, Erin
And
says he's got to go. Thank you for joining us. Super, super appreciate it.
much love to you, Aaron. Thank you. And by the way, he's at great points and explanations. His phone's about to die. So yeah, love and light to you as well, my friend. And I just want to point this out, Melissa, that what we're doing right now, we are learning, right? Like the things that we're talking about in, oh, by the way, Cecilia said, yes, it makes sense.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, loud and clear. So that by having these conversations, like this is part of shifting the collective's consciousness around how to deal with depression, how to hold space for each other. So I just wanted to point that out so that we are not so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, because it's something that we're all learning too,
Yeah,
right? And it's like mental health, depression rates, anxiety rates have like skyrocketed ever since COVID, right? And so this
yeah,
is something that we are all most of us are experiencing for the first time ever. And so like when that happens, we don't know how to work through it, and so that's why it's so important to come together with people who are going through the same thing as you, because
hmm,
then you can share your experiences and you can also share what worked for you and all that stuff, because it's
hmm.
I this I think this is like this is going to be my number one message throughout everything that I do, but it's not about trying to cure or eliminate pain and suffering. It's learning about it's more about understanding that it's part of
It's
what's
part of life. How to
it's
do,
part of
yeah,
life and
yeah.
it's part of being human, and that's why
Hmm.
it's so great that we are social creatures, because then what connects us to each other is our empathy
Hmm.
and our ability to relate to each other's pain. And
Hmm.
when you come together to relate to each other's pain, there's a sense of healing in that, because
Absolutely.
nobody can do it alone.
Yeah.
Nobody can do it alone.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about, having, because therapy has its place, right? And even like seeing a coach has its place. But when you can relate to somebody who's gone through it, there's just, I feel like the healing is more impactful because that person knows exactly what it is that you're going through as opposed to like reading it in a textbook or something they were trained to do.
Yeah.
And we all are a reflection of each other, and we can also like get wisdom or like get little like tricks of the trade of like how to cope with depression in a way that maybe a therapist may not be able to offer.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how to describe it because it's not something that's tangible, but it's so profound just knowing that, like, you know, just even talking to you when we have conversations and we talk about like the moments where we're both like, you know, in the deep pit and our darkest moments where we've thought about, you know, just cutting the string and just ending it, just knowing that you've been there yourself. It's like, you know, that pain. And so it feels safe to be able to let it out. Cecilia said, do you ever feel like you're a burden when you're sharing your thoughts? No,
No, never,
no.
ever. No, no, because that's what we're there for. And that's the beauty about going into a group is that we all know what we're there for. We all know what the intention is. We all know that it's about depression. We all know the depths of how, of the despair of how depression can feel. So that's why immediately when you walk through that door, through that Zoom call, you know that you are absolutely safe. And there's no story that's too dark or too disturbing to share.
Yeah,
So that's
definitely.
my experience.
There's no shame in that,
So yeah,
especially if you're.
yeah, I'm sorry, Elisa. Yeah, yeah. Even if you're saying the same thing over and over again, because that's what you're healing, that's what you're processing. And again, like everyone who's there, they're having the same story repeat over and over and over again. You know, so the more that you can give yourself permission to allow yourself to be vulnerable, then the more healing that you're going to receive. Because again, that's why like support groups I feel like are really valuable to healing through depression. Because again, that container has been set specifically to deal with your depression and what you're going through. So there's no judgment whatsoever. And it, like that's like a collective agreement when everyone's going into that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's okay to talk about it over and over again because you realize it's like the first time you say it, you feel like the shame of it, but then
Mm-hmm.
maybe the 10th time, the 100th time when you start to say it or talk about it openly, like it's more from a place of like compassion. I don't know if
Oh,
that makes sense. Does that make sense?
yeah, understood. This is all new to me, and I feel this year really took a toll on yeah, yeah, sis, all of us, you know. But you know, I
We're here
have
for you.
always, I'm always looking for the silver lining. I've always have viewed the glass half full, and I feel like what's happened in 2020, that yes, it's been dark. It's really challenged us and stretched us beyond our limits, but it has given us this beautiful opportunity to be vulnerable and to come back to the collective mentality. Because up until this point, we've been doing it on our own. It's been like, oh, what can I get out of it? Like, how can I be successful? You know, but now it's like our guards have dropped. It had to drop because of our vulnerability. And so now we're able to, like me personally, and I'm sure, yes, sis,
Mhm.
I know it's
We
crazy
love
times.
you.
We're sending you so much love, you know.
We love you,
But
and
think
we're here
about
for
it,
you.
Sila. Think about it. If it wasn't for COVID, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We probably wouldn't like be sharing our vulnerabilities, you know, like this. So this is, I feel like 2020 has brought a tremendous opportunity for us to really go deep and heal in a way that we've never had before, and it's happening collectively.
Yeah, we're doing it together. We're doing it together. I think that's so powerful.
It's so
We're
powerful.
experiencing it individually in our own ways, but we're also experiencing it together. And that is like so powerful. Like just, you know, coming together to unite. I don't know why, but like there's so much power and strength in that. It's hard to describe.
I just want to acknowledge Aaron is in the house. Good morning, brother. So happy you can join us.
Hi.
All
All right.
right,
So
wanna
is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
well, we talked about like what to say, what not to say, how to hold space. So let's see. I guess we're moving on to the importance of like-minded souls.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're kind of touching on this already, but yeah, just like another hey Aaron, yeah, so we're talking about so this is our segment, Lightworkers Guide to Healing Through Depression. What my girl Melissa. Melissa, this is Aaron Melissa. And
Hi.
so so this is our third episode, and today we're talking about the importance of having a positive support group to help you through depression, because When we try to go through it alone, it just doesn't work because we fester in our negative thoughts, we feel isolated. But when we are able to relate to other people, we can get insight that we wouldn't have gotten before. We could, there's a certain sense of empathy and compassion that you can get from relating to someone, even versus seeing a therapist. So, yeah, so that's what we're talking about. So right now we're kind of getting like towards the end of it here. Let's see here. Yeah, I guess the greatest sense of empathy and compassion that you can get from a group than a therapist. Let's see, they can
Yeah,
relate to your
definitely.
pain. We kind of went through all these already. Effective coping tools. Is there anything else you want to say about that we haven't said yet?
Can offer affecting coping tools. Honestly, with groups or just like by yourself?
Well, I guess the point was that again, when you are able to relate to like your peers who are going through depression or bipolar anxiety, then they can offer like their own individual coping tools that you might have not been able to get from a therapist.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I just got a question. Any advice on how to connect with friends who might not be familiar with holding space? So what's coming up for me in regards to that is you tell them like how you would like for them to show up for you. So let's say that I'm feeling down and I'm feeling upset, and I reach out to Misty and I say, "Hey, Misty, I'm not feeling so good. And I'm not really looking for advice here, but I just want someone to listen to. Can you do that for me? And yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I would, because then when you think about like everybody has different needs, and so um, it's important to voice and communicate with someone what you're looking for, so then they'll know how to
Yeah,
hold that
that
space for you.
space. Yeah. And then also they can, choose to decide how much space they want to hold as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great advice. Is that clear for you, sis? Mhm. Yeah,
I guess we can.
and then again, that's why I also suggest like if you find that there's friends that may not be able to hold that space for you, you're just
Uh-oh.
just yet sharing with friends.
Yeah.
Or, can you hear me?
I,
Am I
I
back?
think you cut off a little bit.
Yeah, I
All right, I
did.
think
My
we're good
phone.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like if you feel like there's no friends within your immediate circle that you feel comfortable being vulnerable with, or that are just not capable of holding space, then that's what online groups can do. Like, Melissa mentioned earlier, Facebook groups. We're gonna put a couple of links in the chat for groups that are specifically designed, to hold that space for you while you're going through depression.
Yeah, there's also something that's coming up for me as well. Because when you think about like your environment, it has a strong influence on your overall well-being. And so when you are going through it, right, it's so important to have a environment that provides the circumstances that need to be met for you to work through it, to heal. I think that's so important. And when you think about your environment, you got to think about your social environment, because that has a big influence, and that's why it's important to have a positive support group, because let's say you have people in your life who are, I guess, toxic, that can really hinder your ability to work through it. And so some people, they have the option of removing, other people don't. But as long as you have like a support group that you can always turn to, that will go a very long way. And it's about, I guess this can be another live thing that we can do, is how to find your positive support group, like finding the
Yeah.
right people for you.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's important to keep that in mind as well. So when it comes to, the people in your life, it's just try the best you can to like, not, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but it's be mindful of like who is adding positive support and negative support, because that's so important as well.
She said, thinks it does. It requires honest communication and personal needs.
Yeah.
Then makes sense.
Yeah.
Great points, hon. Great points.
Yeah. I think that's so important because I know for me, it's like you got to be mindful of who's contributing, who's making it worse for you, and who's uplifting you.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important.
And that gets a
But
little tricky because then sometimes it gets to the point where you may have to cut people out of your life because,
yeah,
of the toxicity that they're bringing in, and that's when it gets really challenging. So
yeah, and it's a lot more challenging when it's family too. Hi,
yeah.
John. It's my bro, John.
What's up,
What's up, man?
John?
But yeah, that part can be very tricky, especially if it's family, because you're like bound together by blood, right? And
Hmm.
so learning to navigate through that, it's already tricky in of itself. But that can be like a whole nother
Yeah,
like
that's
live talking
family.
about
Yeah.
boundaries.
Hmm. Yeah, because I know for
But
me personally, like I came to a realization that as much as my parents love me, my brothers love me, I realize that I can't lean on them like that, like they're just not emotionally available. Hey,
yeah,
Karen, welcome, sweetie, all the way from Ecuador. Yeah, that was really hard to realize, okay, I just can't process with my parents the way that I would like to, and so again, that's why you just seek and keep seeking until you find the right tribe, and then you'll be able to lean on them. But I can guarantee that there are people out there. You do have a community out there. You're not alone. As much as alone you might feel, there is people out there that are willing to hold that
oh,
space. It's just a matter of searching. Love you
thanks,
too,
Karen.
sister. Karen. So,
But yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely I absolutely agree with that because the reason why it's so important to have a positive support group is because the you have everybody has needs that need to be met,
Hmm.
and so it's more of mental health is a function of how you're able to meet those needs and how you handle situations in which those needs are not met. And we
Hmm.
all have the need to connect emotionally with each other, and it's a matter of it's like a trial. It's a process of trial and error to finding
Hmm.
the right people
Yeah.
that you connect with.
Hmm.
But you like you said, there's a community for everybody, and anybody in here, if you feel like you don't have anybody that you can talk to, you have us.
You got
Like,
us. Yeah.
definitely have
Yeah. Yeah.
us.
100%.
You can reach out to us and connect with us because we've been there and we can help each other work through it.
Karen agrees. So true.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. We're at a stage now, you guys, where we're not living that old paradigm anymore. We're not in that old
Yeah.
paradigm where we're doing things on our own, where we're suffering. We're here to lift each other up. We're here to raise up our vibrations, and it's not easy. When you think of the term raise your vibration, it seems like it should just be like this unicorn fairy dust kind of process, but it is challenging. But the beauty, again, I feel like what 2020 has allowed is to bring the tribes together. Like Instagram, I've met people from all over the world. I'm connected with people from all over the world just from Instagram alone. So yeah, it's accessible. Your tribe is accessible now more than ever before.
You can join our tribe.
You can join our tribe. Yeah.
We don't
uh,
discriminate. We are open. We let anybody come in. Doesn't matter how old you are, what your race is. We don't discriminate
we
here.
really don't. No.
Cecilia says,
uh,
I have to go and just wanted to thank you
okay.
guys. You're both amazing for hosting this. God bless and take care.
God
Goodbye.
bless you too.
We
Thank you
love
so
you.
much. Love and light to you. Yes, thank you for joining
Thank you for
us.
joining us.
Well,
Um,
so is there anything like any questions in the chat, or Melissa, is there anything else you want to add before we go into our affirmations and tools?
no, I feel like we went in on the topics today.
Oh, this is so great. It's so awesome. Okay.
We've
All
covered
right.
everything.
Okay, so for those who are joining us for the first time, at the end of every segment, Melissa and I would like to offer an affirmation and tools so that you're able to walk away with something tangible and that you can put into action, right? So the affirmation that we have for today is, and again, we'll be posting this in the link in the comment, is I am open to loving relationships. I breathe reciprocity into my life. So
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
say it. I'll say it
I
again.
resonate.
You resonate with that? I am
Yeah.
open to loving relationships. I breathe reciprocity into my life. So,
Yes.
so that affirmation I just want to share is really from, I kind of like changed the words a little bit, but it's from my womb yoga practice. So in the womb yoga practice, we have affirmations that we say. So I just kind of like tweaked it, but I love that because I feel like reciprocity is really key when it comes to having relationships with people. You know, that there's also like this kind of a give and receive type of exchange, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I share something? It's just like
Please.
maybe it's my inner coach coming out.
Wait,
So
yeah, let it
this is
go.
my perspective on affirmations. For a very long time, I had a mental resistance to affirmations. And if you aren't sure what affirmations, it's phrases or sayings that you say to yourself to affirm it. So if you think about affirmations, it's the beliefs or thought patterns that you cycle and repeat to yourself over and over and over and over again. And so if you've already been affirming the belief to yourself, whether or not you are conscious or unconscious of it, it's constantly running in your mind. And so it's like a habitual way of thinking. So with affirmations, the way that it works is in neurogenesis is like you're building new pathways of thinking.
Yeah.
And the inner coach in me wants to say this, but it helps to get into the habit of doing it. And this is just for you guys. If you really resonate with this, if you want to build that thought, then it's important to do it around the same time every morning and do it in this same place or same location every morning, because then your brain associates your habits
I
to
love
the
that.
locations of your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so an example of this is like, there's so many ways that you can do affirmations. You can do it through journaling. So you can, and affirmations, it only takes, you just need like 5 to 10 minutes every morning. That's all you need, because when it comes to building new habits, you want to make it as easy as possible to do that, especially if you're going through depression. Your energy is low, and so there's a lot of resistance to put in effort to do things. And so same time every day, same location, and same way of doing it. And you can say it to yourself. You can do EFT tapping. That's what I've been doing. Or you can journal. It's more about like finding your thing to affirm the new beliefs for you. So that really wanted to come out. I wanted to share
it. I really didn't make that connection about doing it at the same place in addition to the same time. That's
there's a connection. And another thing is like, this is where you can use essential oils too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's say I want to, because you want to get the vibe going, like your environment has so much influence and impact on the way that you perceive things, because like our brain is subconsciously picking up information for our environment without us even being aware of it. So like your brain is thinking about the temperature of your body and you're not even aware of it. So every time you have a cue, or that's your brain picking up that cue to get into the habit of doing things. Because when you think about habits, whether or not it's through your behaviors or through your ways of thinking, it's something that it happens automatically, and it happens automatically by doing it over and over and over again. So affirmations is not one doing it once or twice definitely does work, but it's more, affirmations is more than just a thing. It's a practice that you do over and over and over again.
Yeah, so, and then with the smell, like the smells immediately goes right into your subconscious mind, right?
Yeah. So let's say I'm doing EFT in the morning. I do on the left side of my couch every morning at 8:15 for 5 minutes. I can put on the essential oil diffuser. Let's say I put on peppermint. So then when that comes on, my brain associates the scent of peppermint with affirming the belief, I'm open to loving relationships. I breathe reciprocity
Reciprocity
into my life. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Totally.
That's just the inner coach in me that
God, I love that, Melissa.
Practical ways.
That's awesome.
To do that.
Yes. You just dropped the gem, lady. Like, that's a microphone drop right there. Thank you for that. Anybody?
Get it out. I'm sorry.
Anybody have any questions about that or any insight? Because that was a gem.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So wrapping it up here. So thank you again for that that insight. I'm gonna start integrating that. And then as far as like tools, and again, Karen says thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope you found that helpful.
Yes, total gem. And so the two tools that we want to offer are just two group therapies that you can look into. Well, one is a group therapy. One is it's called Depression Bipolar Alliance.org. And most of the groups are free. Some like maybe cost like $5 to join, but the majority of them are free. And it's in categories, whether it's like for LBGQ community, if you're dealing with anxiety, if you're dealing with bipolar, if you are a spouse that where your partner is dealing with depression. So there's various categories that you can choose, and the groups are 7 days a week. And they have a facilitator, and the facilitators are not necessarily certified therapists, but they've just gone through the training to hold that space. But again, it's like, at the very least, it's an option for you to take to be able to communicate with other people who are also going through what you're going through. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last tool that we want to offer, it's an organization called Adult Children Anonymous. So it's like AA, but it's for adults who grew up in dysfunctional upbringings. So whether your parents were alcoholics, or maybe they weren't alcoholics, but maybe they were just any type of dysfunction that you grew up. And so you have these tools. Again, you have tools and a support group of people, of adults who also can relate to what you're going through. And that is absolutely free. It's all virtual, of course. And some of these groups are international as well. Like I've had people in some of my groups that live in Australia and live in the UK. So it's just a beautiful way to connect with people from all over the world who are dealing with what you're dealing with as well. So those
so
are
powerful.
tools.
So powerful.
So anything else to add? This was an amazing conversation.
I know. I'm getting filled up. I'm getting downloads right now, to be honest with you.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions? Any last minute statements before we wrap it up? We love you all so much, and I really truly believe that.
For joining us. So grateful for your time, and just setting time aside to just join us on this conversation. Just being here. You're contributing to the growth and healing of the collective.
Absolutely.
So grateful.
Yeah. And I also want to just add that, like, even though, yes, we are in a dark chapter, we're also in a really exciting time to just dig in and to heal and to reunite, as light workers. And, let's really take advantage of this. So let's continue having these conversations, continue being vulnerable. Again, just to remind you all, if you feel like you don't have a support, hit up Melissa, hit up me. We are here. At the very least, you have two people in your circle that are down to hold space and to be support for you. Yes, you're so welcome.
Any other questions before we peace out? No? All right.
Okay. All right, my dear. Awesome conversation. Right. Okay. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody, again for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Well, I guess we'll just catch you guys for our next live next month.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Love and light. Peace.